Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Selling Greenville, your favorite real estate podcast here in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm your host as always, Stan McCune, realtor right here in the Upstate of South Carolina, and you can find all of my contact information in the show notes. If you need to reach out to me for any of your real estate needs, if you're buying, if you're selling, if you're investing, any of those things with regard to real estate, please let me know because I'm your guy. And just a reminder as always, please subscribe to the show if you enjoy it. Please leave a short little rating, short little review, particularly if you're on Apple Podcasts, which the vast majority of you are. I would appreciate if you could just hit that 5-star rating button, leave a quick little review. A few of you have recently, and I appreciate that. The more the merrier, because we can get this show out to as many people as possible. And that helps Greenville, that helps me. That encourages me to continue going with the show, so I appreciate if you guys do that. We've been doing a little mini-series. I've been doing a little mini-series on overviewing different areas of Greenville. And today we're going to overview Simpsonville. So we started with Greenville proper. We went to the city of Greer. Now we're doing the city of Simpsonville. Greer and Simpsonville are just too diverse and too large of areas to combine together with any other areas. However, this will be the last individual city pod that we do. Next week, our episode is going to kind of round out the Upstate. And then for anyone that's interested, they can basically listen to 4 episodes worth of content that will give them a pretty good overview of the Greenville, the greater Greenville area in general. Not going to hit on really too much with regard to the other counties, Spartanburg, Anderson, Pickens, Oconee. I'm not really Cherokee County. I'm not really going to get into those counties, although they're worthwhile places. I've bought and sold and helped people buy and sell real estate in those counties as well. But because this is a podcast really focused on Greenville, we're really focusing on Greenville County with regard to these overviews. So let's jump right into Simpsonville. Simpsonville, like Greer, as I've already kind of alluded to, really encompasses a large geographic area. It goes all the way from Five Forks, which is near Interstate 85, near Woodruff Road, and goes all the way to just north of Cedar Falls Park, which is, I didn't even check to see how many miles that was, but it's a very, very, if you drove from Five Forks all the way to Cedar Falls Park, you're probably talking about a 45-minute drive. And so that is what Simpsonville encompasses, and including Five Forks. Some people think of Five Forks as like its own thing. No, Five Forks really is Simpsonville. When you're living in Five Forks, you have a Simpsonville address. Now, I've heard a lot of differing opinions about Simpsonville over the years in terms of just the reputation that it has. It's always interesting to hear what people relocating to Greenville from another area think about different areas or what they've heard about different areas. And Simpsonville, I've heard the most, rumors about it from people moving here than I really have any other areas. Rumors that I would disagree with. I had one client that was relocating here that had heard that Simpsonville was quote-unquote busy, which I thought was a really interesting opinion since most of Simpsonville, to me, is really rural. I would never, the first thing that would come to mind for me when it comes to Simpsonville isn't that it's busy. It's more that much of Simpsonville is rural. I've heard other people say that it's not close to anything, which is also an interesting opinion since a good chunk of Simpsonville, including that Five Forks area, is right by Woodruff Road, and some of it is right by 385, and some of it is right by Highway 14. And a lot of these connect to some of the main shopping areas of Greenville. So there's a lot of rumors, I guess, out there going around about Simpsonville. I don't know why that's the case, but we need to cut to the chase here. That Simpsonville is a big area, so some of those things might be true. Are there busy areas of Simpsonville? Yes. Are there parts of Simpsonville that aren't close to anything? Yes. But we need to figure out what those areas are. By the way, I just want to take an aside. If you've noticed a sound difference, I have upgraded all of my sound equipment, so I'm hoping that this is translating over to you guys. I'm very excited about some of the sound equipment that I purchased recently. I felt like you guys deserved an investment into this show, and so I've invested some of my hard-earned money from this past year, which you guys helped me to earn, which I'm very grateful for, in order to upgrade the sound equipment. So I hope that is coming through. As you avid listeners know, my main microphone bit the dust a few weeks ago. I was using kind of a temporary mic, and then I was like, you know what? We need to take this to the next level. So I'm hoping that that's the case here. All right. So without me furthering bragging about my audio equipment here, I would like to split up Simpsonville in 4 ways. And as I've said before with the other area overviews, you can split up any area of the Upstate into like a gazillion different areas. But for the purposes of this podcast, so that it doesn't go on for hours and hours, I'm splitting up Simpsonville in 4 ways. 5 Forks, Adams Mill Road area, downtown Simpsonville, and lower Simpsonville. I'm sorry, this is not going to be satisfying for some of you that live in Simpsonville, but this is just going to have to do. The past year, the median sales price, if we look at every sale that had a Simpsonville address, that the city was Simpsonville, whether it was in city limits of Simpsonville or not, the median sales price was $360,000 with a low of $45,000 and a high of $9 million, which is an eye-popping number for the greater Greenville area. In last week's episode, I regretfully did not break down the prices for the different subregions in Greer. That was an oversight on my part. I am going to do that for Simpsonville for this episode. Now, as we've done with the other episodes in this mini-series, I'm going to start with downtown Simpsonville, which I'm going to define as the area south of where Highway 14 and 417 combine, if you're looking at Google Maps, and continuing south, including the obvious Main Street area, as well as the Heritage Park area. And now, again, some of you might be like, wow, that's way wider than downtown Simpsonville. But again, those areas outside of like the main downtown Simpsonville drag where that big clock is and where the railroad went through and whatnot, I don't know. You can't really call the areas, the Heritage Park area and whatnot around it, suburbs, in my opinion. I feel like those are all kind of just part of the downtown area. Maybe you would call some of that midtown, but Simpsonville is not big enough to have a midtown, in my opinion. So I'm just including all of that as kind of part of the greater downtown Simpsonville area. So with that in mind, the median price for this area was a reasonable $351,000 the past year. I say reasonable because that's over the median for the greater Greenville area as a whole, but for a downtown area, that is a reasonable number. And unlike the other downtowns we've talked about, Greenville, Greer, you can still find houses, actual houses, not just apartments and condos, near the main drag. Some of which are small mill houses, which is commonplace. Greer has that. Greer has some small mill houses that are somewhat close to downtown Greer, but there's also some fancy old and even new houses that are within walking or biking distance of downtown Simpsonville itself, which is unique. Downtown Simpsonville is much more residential than the other downtowns in the Upstate. We talked about Greenville, downtown Greenville basically switched over almost all of the single-family housing, made them commercial. Tons of attorneys' offices that are working out of what would have been old houses. And Greer kind of copied that model and basically turned downtown Greer into a miniature version of downtown Greenville, in my opinion. Simpsonville has not done that. Simpsonville, although it has converted some of its single-family housing over to commercial, you still have single-family housing available and accessible to the actual main drag of downtown. Now, of course, as with any area in the upstate of South Carolina, there are plenty of condos being built around downtown as well, as several subdivisions with production-built homes. So I'm not saying that there aren't those things, but there's a little bit more variety close to downtown Simpsonville than there are some of the other downtowns. The low sale of the past year for this area, I already said the median was $351,000. The low sale was $115,000, and the high was $715,000. So not a lot of particularly expensive housing being sold in downtown Simpsonville the past year. Now, Simpsonville has a cute Main Street area with several great restaurants, bars, several really good parks, including, of course, what I've already referenced, nearby Heritage Park, which has the Heritage Park Amphitheater, which has some really great concerts during the summer months. It's not enclosed. It's an outdoor amphitheater. And I've been to several concerts and events over there over the years. Actually, we went to a major concert recently in September. One Republic was there. If you don't know One Republic, that's fine. They did the hit song in the Top Gun sequel that came out this past week. I Ain't Worried or something like that. Anyway, we got to see them perform that live in Simpsonville, so that was kind of cool. I've also been to downtown Simpsonville. They have a little pinball arcade game place right in downtown. That's super cute. You would never even know it's there. And that was a really fun experience. It was like $10 for entry, and you can like come and go all day if you want. At least that was when I went. That was way earlier this year. So there's a lot of stuff to do in downtown Simpsonville. I wouldn't say quite as much as in the other downtowns, but there's still plenty to do. And again, Heritage Park and the amphitheater really rounds it out. That makes it unique for the area. Greer, for instance, doesn't have anything like that. That being said, downtown Simpsonville, I don't really consider it to be nearly as walkable or bikeable as the other downtowns in the area. And getting around it on a busy night can sometimes take a while. There's so many traffic lights everywhere, so many busy intersections that it can just take forever to get through, to make a turn. And so for that reason, downtown Simpsonville is really my least favorite downtown area to drive through. It can just really be a pain. And if you're going to the amphitheater for a major event like that One Republic concert, good luck. I mean, it took us, it took us a very long time from the time we got into downtown Simpsonville until the time we got into the amphitheater. I mean, I think it was close to 30, 40 minutes. It just took a really long time. So that amphitheater where it's located, you have to like drive through neighborhoods to get to it. It's quite clunky in a lot of ways. So even though it's cool that it's there, it's also just the way Simpsonville is laid out. It just makes for a difficult time navigating. Now, there's plenty of convenient shopping nearby, particularly when you go down to Fairview Road. That's one of the main shopping areas in Simpsonville, just south of Interstate 385. Walmart and Target are both very close to this area. But if you're looking for boutique shopping, art galleries, that kind of stuff, Simpsonville doesn't quite have as much as you'll find in some of the other local downtowns. Like, that's not the primary reason that people go to downtown Simpsonville. You can find that type of stuff. It's just not as prevalent. Now, just outside of the Main Street part of Simpsonville, but still within this area, we have the nicest movie theater in the Upstate, a Regal Theater, which also includes IMAX. If you're wanting to go to the movies and you're wanting the best experience that we have in Greenville County, Simpsonville is where you go. And it's the only place where you can see IMAX that I'm aware of in the Upstate. Now, in between Five Forks and downtown Simpsonville is what I will call the Adams Mill Road area, which is a very, very loose description, but it is what it is. This is what I'm stuck with here, okay? It doesn't have a name because it was just like all farmland for so long. But I've heard some people that have lived in this area say they live in the Five Forks area. Some say they live in Greenville. Some say they live in Malden, et cetera, et cetera. But for my purposes, I'm going to call it the Adams Mill Road area of Simpsonville. But it's clearly distinct from downtown Simpsonville and Five Forks. So I don't feel like it's fair to lump in with Five Forks like some people do. Because once you get outside of, I mean, if you're looking at Google Maps, Five Forks is clearly defined within Google Maps, right? They have it kind of grayed out. I would probably say that's a little too specific for Five Forks proper. For instance, I would consider Heritage Lakes, which I'll probably reference this later, but Heritage Lakes is not inside that grayed out area, but I would still consider Heritage Lakes to, roughly speaking, be Five Forks. I think most people would. But that being said, we've got this area in between that grayed out area and downtown Simpsonville that I think has really its own identity. And so that area had a median price the past year of $385,000, with a low sale of $70,000 and a high of $9 million. I've referenced $9 million earlier. This is the area that had that $9 million sale. All of Simpsonville, besides downtown, was very rural up until the past probably 20 or 30 years. So in this area, as you find in a lot of areas that were very rural up until recently, you find a tremendous mix of housing ranging from large custom homes with acreage to 40-year-old brick ranches to production-built neighborhoods. Really a huge variety. And if you drive through, depending on what road you are, that will kind of determine what you're seeing, whether you're driving past a bunch of production-built neighborhoods or whether you're driving past a bunch of custom homes. And that home that sold for $9 million, that was really an incredible estate on over 40 acres, and it ended up being the most expensive home sold the past year in all of Greenville County, at least in terms of what I was looking at in the MLS. There may have been something off-market that sold for more expensive. I don't know. But that home, which was 455 McKinney Road, if I remember correctly, that was the most expensive home sold the past year in the greater Greenville area, and that ended up being in this Adams Mill Road area of Simpsonville. If you're wanting to shop, the part of this area that you want to be in is the part that's closer to I-385 and Highway 14. Those two highways really bring some great convenience to this area, allowing you to get to downtown Malden, Five Forks, Woodruff Road, etc., in really quick order. And between those areas, you can find pretty much any sort of store that you might need. But the eastern edge of this area is extremely rural and not close to shopping, besides Five Forks, which we'll discuss momentarily again. And that's a plus for some, right? Some people want to be in a more rural area. But this is also part of why I can't just say, oh, Simpsonville is busy. Downtown is very busy, but in some of these parts of this Adams Mill Road area, you get out there and it's not busy at all. You feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. And it's going to take you a second to get to a grocery store or to get to Woodruff Road or to Fairview Road or to any other sort of shopping that you could come up with. As far as like parks go, there are a few parks, and Holly Tree is a nice golf course that's right in this area. But because there are several homes with land, which we discussed, I believe, last week, along with major residential developments that have gone up in recent decades, there isn't a ton of green space devoted to the public immediately within this area. You have to go to downtown Simpsonville, Heritage Park, maybe cross over towards Malden, go to Lake Conisty, areas like that aren't very far from there, but aren't within this immediate region. Now, one thing that's nice about this area is it's an opportunity, and for some people this is, as I already said, a major appeal. It's an opportunity for you to live in a rural area without being super far from anything. I mean, there are some rural areas of Greenville that it would just take you a really, really long time to get anywhere. Even if you're on that eastern edge of this area, you're still going to be less than probably 30 minutes away from any sort of shopping. Now, for some people, that would feel like an eternity. My wife couldn't handle that. She wouldn't want to be in an area that rural. But for some people, that's nice. They want to kind of be more out in the country, and they don't do shopping every single day. And so to be able to get to most shopping within 30 minutes, that's totally acceptable to them. To be able to have to drive 20-25 minutes to a grocery store, no problem. We'll just stock up when we go. So different strokes for different folks. It's neither a plus nor a negative that there are some rural areas there. It's just if you don't want that, you have to be more on the western edge. I think I might have said eastern edge before. If I did, I meant the western edge of this, where it butts up against I-385 and Highway 14. That's the part of this area that offers you the most flexibility. Now, Five Forks, which I get a lot of questions about Five Forks. Five Forks is one of the most controversial areas in the entire upstate. On the one hand, you have a lot of recently built homes, the vast majority of which are less than 20 years old. And you have great shopping options within Five Forks itself, as well as great restaurant and shopping options just a few minutes away on Woodruff Road. But you also have a tremendous amount of traffic. And this would be an area that, generally speaking, I would consider to be a busy area, mainly because one of your main connecting roads is Woodruff Road. And anyone that lives around here knows that Woodruff Road, for all of the great things about, the various shopping options that you have there, navigating it, getting to and from it, that's not one of the things that we like about it. I love to go to Costco. I go to Costco all the time, which is on the far end of Woodruff Road. This time of year, I hate going to Costco because even though it's not even in the middle of Woodruff Road. So in theory, it should be easy to get in and out of. No, it's not. And maybe I'm whining a little bit here. Some of you are probably listening and being like, oh, come on, it's not that bad. It depends on your perspective. For me, no thank you. I try to avoid major heavy traffic at all times. I don't want to be driving around the Costco parking lot for 20 minutes looking for a parking space this time of year. So I'm just going to take a little Costco time out until the holiday season is past us. But speaking of the holiday season, if you're trying to go from Five Forks all the way to, let's say you're going from Five Forks to Costco, oh man, brutal. It's only a few miles, but it's just going to take you so long to go all the way down there. It's going to take you several minutes to get to Interstate 385, Interstate 85. That's just one of the downsides of Five Forks. It is close to things, but at the same time, just the way it was built was not conducive to all of this traffic. And this is why you'll hear people complain about infrastructure in Greenville County. That's one of the reasons, is that there were a lot of developments that were built without, in areas like Five Forks, without really putting enough concern into the infrastructure that they should have. And so this is what we have as a result. Five Forks is also controversial because it's one of the areas, as I've already said, that has been developed heavily. So it's a lot of production-built homes on small lots. And that's not for everybody. And if it's not for you, then you just go south to the Adams Mill part of Simpsonville, and then you get a lot larger lots that are very close to Five Forks. But for some people, they like those production-built neighborhoods, those subdivisions that, some of them have pools in the subdivision, some nice amenities. For some people, that is a major draw. And if you're moving to Five Forks, that's probably a major draw for you. The median price point in Five Forks for the past year was $365,000, with a low of $120,000 and a high of $3 million. So higher, a good about $50,000 higher than the Greenville median, the greater Greenville area median. But in terms of a price per square foot basis, you're probably looking at around $150 per square foot, which is reasonable. A 200,000 square foot house for $300,000. That's by Greenville standards, that's pretty good right now. Now there aren't a lot of parks around here, although there is a massive soccer complex called Mesa. I've never done anything out at Mesa, but for those of you that are into soccer, perhaps there's some interesting things to go on there. As far as schools, I haven't really talked about schools in this episode much, and I always have to be careful with that. But there are some award-winning schools in and around Five Forks. As I've said before, the shopping there is great. You do have Woodruff Road very close by, which if you're willing to battle that traffic, obviously super convenient. But just within Five Forks itself, there are several restaurants, mostly fast food and chain types of places. But you could argue that the best grocery stores really in all of the upstate are right there in Five Forks. There's a Lowe's Foods, which is a kind of boutique but large. It's not like Trader Joe's size. It's still a large grocery store, but I would consider it more of a boutique grocery store. For instance, they have like a brewery and a barbecue place in there. You can like get something to drink or something to eat and be like eating it while you're shopping kind of thing. We have several of them in the Upstate. One of them is right there in Simpsonville. There's a Sprouts grocery store, which is the only of its kind right there in Five Forks. And the Publix in Five Forks, I've had to go into a few times, and Publix is a major grocery chain here, probably the largest grocery chain that we have here in the Upstate. And that Publix in Five Forks has to be the nicest one in all of the Upstate. It's really, really nice. So you've got some great grocery store options right there that will only take you a few minutes to get to. Long story short, most people who move to Five Forks will do so because it offers some affordable neighborhoods with nice houses in it. For instance, Orchard Farms is one of the most popular neighborhoods, subdivisions in the Upstate. It's right there in Five Forks. But traffic and infrastructure are concerns that aren't going away anytime soon. And neighborhoods just west of Five Forks proper, such as Heritage Lakes that I already referenced, they almost never have homes go for sale. So that's just kind of the way it is. Lots of homes go for sale in Five Forks proper, that shaded area in Google Maps. But again, it comes down to, do you want to be in a production-built home? Are you fine with that? Are you fine with that location, with it maybe taking a while to get to downtown Greenville, with taking a while to get through Woodruff Road? And what is it that you're willing to give up to be in a subdivision that is really nice, that's really kept up with, that offers housing at oftentimes more affordable pricing than the rest of Greenville County? That is kind of the push and pull of Five Forks. Now, last but not least, we have what I'm just going to call Lower Simpsonville. I don't know if anyone has a better name for it than that, but I'm just going to call it Lower Simpsonville, and think of it as a section of Simpsonville south of both Interstate 185 and Interstate 385, which they're kind of the same thing, right? 185 just loops right into 385. The only difference is 185 is a toll road, 385 isn't. Now, this is a massive area, and I hate to lump it all into one, but I couldn't really think of a better way to do this. This is about 11 miles from the northern tip of it to the southern tip of it. Nuts. So unsurprisingly, it had a lot of homes sold the past year. The median price for this area was $340,000, with a low of $45,000 and a high of $1.3 million. Now, this area is almost exclusively rural. Some parts of it are really in the middle of nowhere. Most of the time, people moving here only do so if they really want to live in the country, or if they've just been priced out of the quote-unquote suburbs. Now, if you're close to West Georgia Road or Fairview Road, you'll be fine for shopping. Otherwise, you'll need to drive a bit to find a grocery store or other shop. Restaurants, there's not really any, unless you're going towards Fairview Road. Outside of Fairview Road, there's just not a whole lot of restaurant options in this area. As I said, it's a very rural area, generally speaking. There aren't a ton of parks, but the Reedy River does cut through this area. Reedy River, if you're not familiar with the Upstate, is the river that cuts straight through downtown Greenville and where the waterfall comes off of. It's also the river that the Swamp Rabbit Trail, popular bike trail in Greenville County, it's the river that trail follows. So anyway, Reedy River cuts through this area, ultimately ending up at Cedar Falls Park, which is just outside of Simpsonville. I believe technically it's Pelzer, if I'm not mistaken. But Cedar Falls Park is probably the closest thing to a good park that this area has, even though it's just outside of it. But it's close enough to make sense. And what's nice about Cedar Falls Park is that it's a really nice natural park that, because it's in a more rural area, it doesn't get a lot of traffic. I've actually gone there several times. It's really a hidden gem for this area in general. I wouldn't say that there is a ton to do. I think there is a playground and whatnot, but it's just a nice little area to see some flowing water. If you've got kids that want to splash around or a dog that wants to splash around in water, walk on some rocks. It's a nice park that you can kind of get away from the craziness of downtown Greenville and some of these other areas that have water features, but still be fairly convenient to all of that kind of stuff. Now, in general, if you're interested in going into downtown Greenville, as I just referenced, with any regularity, I don't recommend this part of Simpsonville. I mean, it's just going to take you a while to get there. And really, any of the areas that I've referred to as rural in this podcast, if you want to get to downtown Greenville, it's going to take you probably a good 30 minutes to go from the rural areas of Simpsonville to get into downtown Greenville. If you're down near Cedar Falls Park, it's going to take you even longer. So you just need to be prepared for that. Now, I'll be honest, I know a lot of people that live here that never go to downtown Greenville. So that's crazy to me. I love downtown Greenville. I will sometimes, if I have like a meeting down there, I will just kind of take an hour to just walk around. Sometimes we'll go do some things with the kids downtown, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not one of those people, but I know a lot of people that live in this area that literally never go to downtown Greenville. So if you think that that's a possibility for you, then perhaps being in one of these more rural areas of Simpsonville isn't so outrageous. And if you're wanting to live in the country, these are some really great areas. The more rural areas tend to have cheaper housing in general because you end up paying a premium when you're closer to shopping, closer to parks, and all of those types of things. But that's it. That's all I have to say about Simpsonville in general. Really a huge variety of areas. And as I said, a very controversial area of the Upstate. But at the end of the day, I've had a lot of clients that have moved to Simpsonville and they love it. They love, variety of housing that I've helped sell in that area over the years. But I've never heard anyone that moved to Simpsonville say they regretted it. I've only heard positive things. And that is the feeling that I get every time I'm in the area, with the exception of the traffic that I've run into, particularly downtown and around that amphitheater. Otherwise, I'm a big fan of Simpsonville. I love what they're doing. And I think the future is bright for that area. That's it for today's episode. I appreciate you guys listening as always. All of my contact information is in the show notes. Please subscribe to the show if you enjoy it. Please leave a rating or a review if you're listening in Google Podcast or Spotify. And we'll talk again to round up this mini series next week.